Hey, so with the shit that's gone on with PewDiePie, Milo Yiannopoulos, and especially JonTron, it's become very tenuous to ever say anything critical about black people online. Now, one of the things that we're constantly dealing with when it comes to BLM and debates about race in this country is it has to do mostly with black criminality. Well, here's a fact. And basically, all the numbers I'm going to be using are kind of taken off the top of my head, but that's okay because it doesn't matter if they're super concrete. But if you go and check the 2013 FBI crime survey, you'll see that I'm within reasonable margins of errors on these numbers. But this is more about teaching how to argue, not necessarily getting those numbers spot on. So 52% of all violent crime is committed by black people. Progressives don't like that, and usually they will say, well, poverty's the reason why. And it is true that about 24% of the black population is in poverty when it's only about 13 or 14% for white people. The thing is, you do the numbers, black people are 13% of the population, white people are between 66 and 72% of the population, I believe, depending on specifically what you call a white person. If you think somebody from, say, Serbia is white, you think Slavic counts, then that's in there. And also white Hispanic, like person from Spain, would look actually rather more like me than like Domingo from Home Depot, if you get my meaning. Ooh, don't read too much into that. It's just a joke. Anyway, so there's more poor white people, and yet they're not represented in this way. So, and the scary thing is when it comes to that 52%, that is almost entirely committed by black males aged 15 to 35. So that's not 13%. That's not even 7%. That's somewhere between like 4 and 5% of the population doing that 52%. And when it comes to murders, so 300 million people in the country, 70% or so are white, 13% are black, and yet in 2013, blacks committed just over 5,000 murders total, and whites committed just under 5,000. So that's a huge overrepresentation. So I don't think poverty is the answer. So let's go into some of what I think are the reasons why. Now, you'll notice that none of these have anything to do with genetics or skin color. They have to do with things black people can change about themselves, not ways they were born, but ways they were raised. You're not going to hear any of this alt-right blacks have lower IQ nonsense, because whether or not that's true, and I don't really think it is, it's not, I think, has anything to do with the reason why, because I don't even think low IQ is an indicator of crime like poverty is. So let's go into reason number one. So here's a hypothesis that's very tenuous, very circumstantial and hearsay, but I think is very, very relevant. And if you disagree, I don't think you're being honest. And that is black Americans have a culture of anti-intellectualism. That academic achievement and learning, whether it's scholastic or for your own shits and giggles, not viewed as cool. And in fact, having a nice expanded vocabulary with polysyllabic words while you're sounding white. And that's bad. And I do think there's a little bit of a cultural isolation problem and a racism problem in the black community, but I don't even particularly think that's all that relevant either, because you can be a racist and not a criminal. So we're going to throw all that shit out and just stick with the anti-intellectualism, that you're not necessarily going to climb out of poverty and be a suit and tie CEO if you don't get good grades. Here's one that's more concrete. The big elephant in the room that progressives, especially ones affiliated with Black Lives Matter, won't get caught dead talking about. That's right, gang culture. The big thing about gang culture is that's adding metric fuckloads into crime. And if you look at those murder statistics in particular for the black population, it's black people murdering other black people at prodigious rates. And that's the organized crime factor. That's pretty well, built into places like good old Chirac, Chicago, Detroit, South Central Los Angeles, these kind of places. And that's where a lot of that shit's going down. And you know what? Being in a gang is a choice. Just like not taking school seriously is a choice. Now, here's the really big one, the one I'm going to talk a little bit extra about. And it's one I can personally relate to, and that is that over 70%, I think it's actually 72% of all black children born in America today are born to unwed single mothers, usually unwed, uneducated, or not college educated, I should say, young single mothers. Now, I was born to a single mother, but my mom was a little bit of the feminist dream. She was a single woman in a STEM job, making good money, until NAFTA happened in the mid-90s, and thousands of people in the little Silicon Valley of the Midwest, just everybody's out of their tech jobs and everybody's fucked. And I spent a good 5 years in poverty. I wasn't necessarily homeless, but I was the kind of homeless where you're crowd surfing, you're living in people's basements, you get sent off to live with your grandma for 6 months and have to uproot and go to a different school in fucking Omaha, Nebraska. And I lived for, I think it was 7 months. My room was my cousin's walk-in closet in my aunt's apartment, and my mom slept on the couch. So that sucked. Okay. And and I lived as a racial minority where I grew up, even when we were still doing fairly well. I lived in a very Hispanic town, Longmont, Colorado, and I was El Gringo Niño, the only white kid on the block. You probably heard me say that a dozen times if you're a subscriber of mine. But to get it back on point, I probably would have done a lot better off if I was living in a two-income household where I had two parents taking care of my wild ass. I would have done a lot better. I would have had more direction. I would have had a male role model. I would have had more supervision, and when my mom is a single mother working 60-hour work weeks at her tech job, even when things were on the up and up financially, that wasn't good for me. Now, you want to take, sorry to sound racist and use a little bit of a stereotype, but Shaniqua working at Burger King, not exactly fit to raise kids. Okay? And that's as harsh as I intend to be and as stereotypical as I need to be, but it's that bad. Or worse yet, Shaniqua on welfare. Or honestly, since you can't really fucking support a kid, even if you are working full-time at Burger King, that's not even going to fucking work out, that Shaniqua's still on government assistance while working full-time with that kid by herself. That's not good for the kid. All right? And that just fucking is common sense, I think, right? And that's not disparaging of hypothetical Shaniqua, but it's a fucking reality for a lot of people in America. And that is something that can change. How about don't get pregnant? How about fucking, if you're going to have unprotected sex with somebody, be in a much more stable relationship? And how about don't have kids when you're 16, 17, 18, 19, even 20? My mom might have been a single mother, but I was born when she was 28 and employed. So, and my childhood still sucked. And I still lived in, high crime areas, not necessarily fucking Chirac, but high crime for some rural ass fucking area. And, fucking to be all racially inclusive, the major gangs where I lived were not black. They were Hispanic and they were white biker gangs. Those are a thing. I'm not saying they're not. But these are the reasons why that statistic is true. That blacks are massively overrepresented in crime. And it is for changeable reasons. It's not for their skin color. Now, at this point, even if you could lay every last bit of the blame of the current situation at my feet, allow me, as the ambassador of all white people, to hereby accept that it's white people's fault that black people are where they are right now, today. Now, how do you expect me, ambassador of white person, to fix everything for you? We can't fix your culture for you, especially not when you have your own anti-white racism problem. I can't tell you what to do. I can tell you what you're doing wrong. It's up to you to fucking change it. Thanks for watching.